What's up guys, welcome to this review of John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum. Set 1 hour after the events of John Wick Chapter 2, John Wick himself is now on the run from every assassin in New York City, and that's kind of all the story is about. It's about him trying to flee the city, trying to avoid being killed by everyone. And that's also one of the most disappointing things about this film, because there isn't a huge deal of story in there. Now, I say that's disappointing. This is a good film. I like this film quite a bit. It's a really fun and enjoyable action film. One of the best in a long time. Probably the best John Wick film as well. So, the problem with the story is that this is the third entry in the franchise now, and it's very much just continuing off from the first two, particularly the second one. This is very much a part 3, chapter 3, as it says in the title. So it's relying on the lore and the characters and the world building that's already happened. Therefore, in this one, it kind of just hits the ground running and assumes that you know all that stuff already. This is not a standalone film by any means, at least when it comes to the story and the characters. There's also the problem that this is an action film, and the highlights of this film are the action scenes. And there's a lot of action scenes in there, luckily enough. But that means that whenever it goes to a dramatic scene, the dramatic scenes aren't quite as interesting. But speaking of the world that they're inhabiting and all the lore that they built up, it is a fascinating world, and I want to see more of it. And I think we're going to see more of it. They are doing a TV show as well, which I'm not too sure about. But the world is fascinating. It's really interesting. If it is also a little bit of out there and hard to believe and unrealistic. Like, it's weird, for example, how almost everyone John Wick bumps into happens to be somehow related to this world of assassination, whether it be like a taxi driver or just someone who walks by in the street or whatever. They're everywhere, and it's like, right, how are there so many people involved in this? So that's odd, and you kind of just gotta take it as it is. But like I said, it's an action film, really good, fun action scenes. A lot of the action scenes reminded me a lot of the Raid films, which is a good thing, because the Raid films are brilliant. There's also good use of comedy in there. There's actually surprising good use of comedy in there. Some one-liners here and there. So for example, there's this huge fight scene, big epic one-on-one fight scene, and then at the end, the loser just sits up and says, hey, that was a good fight, wasn't it? It's got a good way of making all of this really gory, gruesome action more palatable, and it works really well, the comedy in there. And there's not a huge deal of it, but it is there, and a lot of the comedy as well is kind of in response to some slightly over-the-top action bits. The action, I would say, is for the most part very realistic. Chances are they've done it with real stunt people, and so it comes across being like, yeah, I believe this could happen. There's only one instance, which I'll get into in the spoiler section later on, where I was like, yeah, I don't believe that would happen, but we'll get into that later. In terms of the characters though, the standouts in terms of acting have to be Ian McShane and Asia Kate Dillon. Both of them are really great actors. Asia Kate Dillon is essentially the villain in this film. They are a non-binary person in real life. I don't know if they're playing a female character in this film or not, but in real life they're non-binary, so I'm going to call them they, and they are brilliant actors. If you've seen Billions, you know that they're good. Here they are playing a really interesting, cool villain, and I want to see more of that character. And one of the things this character does so well is that despite being a fairly new up-and-coming actor, they can match the talent of the like of Keanu Reeves and Ian McShane and draw attention to them, mainly because they've got such a unique look and style, and they've got a presence with them. So I've really got to give a shout out to Asia Kate Dillon for that. Sadly, in terms of the characters though, a lot of the characterization does depend on the way the characters look and the way the characters and who's playing the characters, basically. So the fact that they have got these familiar faces and names playing the characters adds a great deal of them, because they're not going in diving into their backstory all that much. The only one in this film that you really kind of get that with is Halle Berry's character, a new addition to the film franchise. She's not a huge addition by any means here. She's only in like maybe a third of the film, if that. But yeah, she's the only real character that we see something about her backstory who actually gets a bit more fleshed out. And I think that might be because she's not done with the franchise yet, but I could be wrong. But just to highlight some of the action scenes that I liked, there's one at the beginning that's very reminiscent of a fight scene in the James Bond franchise with the character of Jaws, because you've got this huge, like, the guy must be more than 7 feet tall, because Keanu Reeves is a tall guy, and this guy towers over him. So the film opens up with this action scene between Keanu Reeves and this huge guy. Very reminiscent of the James Bond films. Very good, cool action scene. There's also some scenes involving dogs, and they are really well done because they add some variety to the action scenes. And that's one of the criticisms we've got towards the action scenes of the film, is that a lot of them do seem to repeat certain moves and maneuvers. And yeah, there's a lot of like guns shooting each other and knives thrown and all that lot. So there is a lot of variety in there. But a lot of them kind of start off with him just grabbing someone's arm and gun and trying to take them down and then dealing with the other people. So there is some repetition there too. But the dogs add a lot of new, unique, interesting stuff that I don't think I've really seen before in a film before. There's also stuff with horses, which is the one time where I was like, okay, maybe you're going a little too far with this one. And it's also a case of, yeah, is this CGI? Is this real? It doesn't look great, but I like what you're trying to do here. But one of the things I like about the John Wick franchise is that, yes, they're action films. Yeah, the story and the characters are lacking a little bit, but what really makes up for that is the direction and the cinematography. These are gorgeous, well-made films. The cinematography is absolutely brilliant. The fact that it's got like noir lighting and use of neon lights and backgrounds and smoke and atmospherics and so on. The use of color is brilliant as well. It makes almost every shot in the entire film gorgeous, like an art piece. And the directing in the film is really well paced. The good use of camera angles, the good use of stunt choreography, really top-notch directing and cinematography, yeah, and I think that takes it more above being just an action film. There's also a good, moody soundtrack here, again, touching on the noir aspects of it. It has a good way of amping up the tension and the pressure of certain scenes, particularly towards the beginning where he is on the run and you're just waiting for something to happen, and it just keeps building until finally he gets basically caught by a bunch of assassins and he has to start fighting them. And then there's other stuff where it's getting really dramatic and really just like more upbeat, like rocky kind of action stuff. So the soundtrack's really good, lots of different variations in there, and I liked it quite a bit. But I mentioned how the dramatic scenes are less interesting before. While I think the pacing of the film is really good for the most part, when it isn't on the action scenes, which are much more fast-paced and upbeat, the dramatic scenes do slow it down a little bit. And I think that's mainly because the story and the characters aren't quite there to make it as interesting as it could have been. And that's John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum. I'm going to go into spoilers now, so if you haven't seen the film, well, leave, come back, watch the rest of this. But before you leave, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @the_Grant and leave comments and feedback down below. Let me know what you thought of John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum. And most importantly, subscribe to my channel. If you like this, give me a thumbs up as well. Subscribing is really important though, because it helps me grow my channel, it helps me promote my channel, and it helps me be encouraged to make more content for you. And now I'm going into full spoilers. So again, if you haven't seen the film, you've been warned, full spoilers. So not a lot of spoilers to talk about here, because like I said, it is just an action film. The only real spoilers to talk about is towards the end of the film, when they do clearly try and set up for a fourth film in the franchise, which we all knew was coming anyway. But the fact that John Wick then falls off the top of a building, batters himself across several fire escapes, that was the one thing in the film I was like, right, maybe you went too far here. How could he have possibly survived that? And even if he did survive, he's never going to walk again, surely. So that was the only bit in the film where I was like, yeah, maybe you're pushing this a bit too much now. There's also the fact that the final reveal reveals that Lawrence Fishburne, whose character died early in the film, is actually still alive, somehow. So early in the film, he was struck down with 7 cuts and killed. That was the whole point of it. You get 7 cuts and you die. So what did they do? Did they just walk away and leave his body without actually checking if he was dead? I don't know. It's weird how all of a sudden now he's back alive. Yes, he's got scars all over him. Yes, he's not in great shape, but he's still there. It felt really forced. But I am looking forward to the 4th film regardless. These 3 films so far have been really good, really fun and enjoyable. I would say John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum is the best of the John Wick films, purely because they've pushed the action so far. It's really well made in terms of production, and it's just really darn fun. The only other things I want to touch on is that there are clear James Bond influences in these films. Just the visuals sometimes replicate some James Bond stuff. I talked about how a character earlier in the film reminded me of Jaws. In the second film, there was this whole scene in like this hall of mirrors kind of thing, which is a clear inspired by The Man with the Golden Gun. When they kind of do that again in this film, except it's not mirrors, it's more about glass and reflections, but still it's very much a with the Golden Gun inspired event. And I like that. There's also the fact that almost every assassin that you see in the film, almost every character in the film, looks like he could easily have just been pulled from a James Bond film, so that's cool as well. And that's kind of all I got to say. Again, story, not much to go on, not much to say. The world building is starting to get a little bit like iffy here and there, because it's like, how much can I actually believe this stuff is actually happening? And they keep adding stuff to it, they keep exploring it more, and the more it gets in depth, the more detailed it gets, the more I'm like starting to scratch my head wondering like, yeah, I'm not too sure about that. But we'll just have to wait and see how that pans out. And that's my review. Thanks for watching, and again, subscribe to my channel please, and Twitter and Instagram at _GrandBurden. Thanks for watching.